Hi, Jamie McIntyre here, founder of the 21st Century Australia Party. Thank you for coming to the press conference. We really just wanted to take this opportunity to announce that 21st Century Australia Party will be running in the 2016 federal election coming up shortly. As many of you may know, that we believe we're unfairly denied the right to run in the 2013 federal election, and we believe there was deliberate delays in the registration of the party. But despite all that, we were able to create a lot of awareness in 2013 about what the party stands for, and we're very, very happy with the amount of support that we got, grassroots support by people that really wanted to see some common sense policies and a party that can shake up, ideally, hopefully, the two-party duopoly, which we believe is failing this country and preventing the country taking the necessary path and direction that it needs to take to ensure it has a vibrant and economic, abundant future. So before I open up for questions, I just want to highlight that why we started 21st Century Australia 3 years ago was we really believe Australia needs to modernise its education system as one of the main core reasons, bring it into the 21st century. We have a heavily outdated education system. And myself, as an educator for the last 18 years in this country, I've been very focused on doing what we can to, teach the skill sets required to bring Australia into the 21st century and have us be, leaders and innovators and take our country forward to create abundance and prosperity. And I believe education is the best place to invest to really transform a country, but not just the typical academic education, as we've seen in the past. Is that even with the Gillard government, they increased the education budget by 46%, but did the quality of education or the performance of students increase by 46%? We know that's not the case. So simply throwing money at is not the solution. We need a proper 21st century modern day education system taught at school and university. The other key point that we had part of the platform for 20th Century Australia was to modernise our political system. Myself as a voter and many others would feel the same way, that we feel the current two-party duopoly political system is failing our country. We need a lot more diversification, we need a lot more choice, and we have a situation where neither of the major parties is willing to really speak the truth and say that, hang on, we actually have a budget crisis, we have a budget deficit, we have all this debt increasing, and we need to reduce the wasteful expenditure. We need to be smarter with our money and be more fiscally disciplined. That's just the reality. We can't just keep making promises and promises that can't be funded and political bribes effectively to get voters to put us into power, because we all know that if we don't manage our finances, and we're a very rich country, and we have no excuse for the rapid increase in debt that we've seen in recent years as a result, despite coming out of one of the greatest commodities booms in the country. We're one of the richest countries on the planet, and other countries now that have never had that golden egg that we've had are now managing their debt levels better than what we are. We're seeing an escalation of debt levels, and neither of the parties are able to really address that, and we are facing some major financial issues in the years ahead if we don't be honest with the electorate and able to get through. So we feel the two-party system is failing us. We wanted to modernise the political system that was created 200 years ago to bring it into the 21st century, and some of those ideas were enabling voters to put more power back in the hands of voters. Many voters are frustrated because they don't believe they actually have choice in policies in this country. We have technology now. Why can't we have voting online? Why is there compulsory voting in a so-called democratic country, for starters? People should have a choice where they want to vote. And two, we should be able to vote online and not just vote for a political party. We should be able to vote direct on major policy. That way voters get a greater say in the running of the country. And I feel that would make a big difference. So we need to bring our political system and modernise it and restore the power back to the people, because otherwise we have this two-party duopoly system which is failing the voters. And until that changes, we're going to not be able to get the advancements this country could have if we had a lot more common sense policy and political parties were willing to be far more honest with the electorate and tell them how it is, and not worried whether they're going to be re-elected or not. Because that just creates a situation we have now where they're basically going to bribe the electorate or basically hold back from saying how it really is. So I'll open up for questions as far as the 20th Century Australia Party, where we're at, where we see things going, and what we attempt to achieve with the party.
Jamie, are you going to be running for the 2016 elections as you did in 2013 against Barnaby Joyce for the seat of New England?
In 2013, yes, I did run in the seat of New England in the lower house. Obviously, for those who know my story, it's where I'm from. Where I grew up, my family has farms there, and I spent a lot of my time there. I personally won't be running in the New England electorate in this election. However, we have plans to run a candidate in the New England seat. It will be certainly a very hotly contested seat in New England, probably the most watched seat. Of course, Tony Windsor has threatened and has announced that he'll be running against Barnaby Joyce, the Deputy Prime Minister, and attempting to give Barnaby the boot effectively. My opinions on Tony Windsor have been, I think, well stated. I felt he betrayed the nation, betrayed the New England electorate in the past. I think people have to have a short memory to re-elect Tony Windsor. Simply why? 92% of in the electorate in New England voted against Labor, and when we had the hung election in 2010 with Abbott and Gillard, Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott chose to put Labor Party into power. And I feel that is a major betrayal. When 92% of the electorate votes against Labor and he decides to go, I wonder who I should put into power, it's pretty obvious who you should put into power, who your constituents said you should put into power. And I feel that was a betrayal of the democratic system, and that's why I ran last time. One of the reasons was to prevent or stop Tony Windsor being re-elected. And once I announced that I was running and likely to preference Barnaby Joyce at that time, Tony Windsor quit and didn't run in the seat of New England. Now it's a very, a lot of people, minor parties are going there to preference Tony Windsor and the Greens to stop Barnaby Joyce being re-elected. I have no issues with Barnaby Joyce. I think he's done a good job as Agricultural Minister, and he's one politician will tell it how it is, whether people like him or not. At least he's a straight shooter, and I think he's done a good job. So. And it'll be up to the New England people to decide who they want to re-elect. But we'll be running a candidate in the New England seat. And the party, last time I was forced to run as an independent. I wasn't able to run at the last minute under 21st Century Australia banner. And as a result of that, that made things very difficult because the independents in New England, thanks to Tony Windsor, had a very bad name. People no longer trust them. And because of what happened before. So despite that, we still got a large amount of support. And I'd say to a lot of the national voters in New England, when I was there campaigning, were very inspired and very supportive of our policies, because our policies are common sense and they know we need to improve the country. And our goal in 21st century is predominantly to be a policy think tank, to be more than a political party. It was always about being a political movement and to really highlight some quality policies for the country and get them out there and notice. And I can tell you that obviously policy documents from 2013 have been well read, and many of those policy initiatives have been considered, and some have even been introduced. So we still want to push policy even as a minor party, and highlight things that often major parties don't have the courage to push policy. But when they see that someone else has pushed it and it gets good feedback, well, then they're willing to take the risk and run with policy. We don't particularly care who's elected in this country. What we want is good policy. And that's what most people want. And we know that certain sides of government are less likely to deliver good financial policy for this country.
Jamie, recently you've got some negative publicity, especially from left-wing media. Why do you think that has been happening? Some say that the media has been attacking you. Why do you think that's happening?
Australia is a very interesting place. You could say, is it a coincidence or is it targeted campaigning? Fairfax media, left-wing media that supports the Labor Party in this country, and it's not disputed they support the Labor Party. Ever since I announced going into politics in 2013, saying 21st Century Australia, have relentlessly attacked me through the media and what's known as character assassination. I think people interested in democracy must question, why is this? Why are they going after my business interests so heavily? Why are they smeared me at every attempt? And why has it been Fairfax mainly, not so much News Corp media? And I don't think it's a coincidence that ever since I went into politics that this has started. And I think we know politics is dirty, but really it goes to highlight why are they so threatened. And I can tell you why I think they're so threatened is because even minor parties, if we have a tight election, and we've had them obviously in 2010, and elections have been often very close, even a minor party, if it was to get to 1 to 2% of the vote, even a small amount of the vote, then in a tight election, that party ultimately would have the power, depending on who it preferences, who forms government. And I think the two-party duopoly in this country and the media organisations, the duopoly of media organisations that control this country effectively and who basically tell you who you should vote for, are very concerned about the rising up of a third party. As we've seen in many Western countries, third parties have even come to power. So I think because many people are fed up with two-party duopoly of party politics and want to see real change and real policy. So I think they have very good reason to be scared of an organised party that can, over time, with realistic goals, generate an awareness and push good policy, or could determine who government is one day. So I think it's no coincidence why they've been attacked, but I think it's poor form. Attack policies, but why attack the individual? Why attack someone's commercial interest to cut off the funding for a political party? And all I can say is that they've tried very hard, but the party is still continuing to go, and it just made me more determined and my supporters to say, hang on, there's something not right in this country, that they'll go to that level to destroy a party founder or destroy the funding for a party and to try and discredit them. Why are they scared of this message of what our policies are getting out to the people? Why do they want just Labor or the coalition to only be the only choice that people have? I think it's time things change in this country and we had more people with common sense and common sense policies, and we should be discussing these. Everyone in Australia should have an input into the future of this country, not just two parties that think they have a monopoly over our choices.
So, what do you think of the current political situation and the current problems Australian politics is facing?
Well, I think the challenge we have is that we have one side of politics which will lie continually to the public and think that you can just increase taxes and spend more, and promise things and can't fund things. And we've seen the damage that does. We have the other side of politics tries to restore fiscal discipline, but struggles to do that. Neither side of politics is willing to tell you the truth. The truth is this: Australia does not have a revenue problem. We keep being told, our revenues dropped because the commodities boom. It's not actually accurate. Our revenue has stopped rising as fast as it would have been, but here's some statistics. 5 years ago, the total revenue, tax revenue of local, state and federal governments was $400 billion. Guess how much we have today, 5 years later? $500 billion. It's $100 billion more. Do we have a revenue problem or do we have a spending problem? If we've got $100 billion more 5 years later and we have a massive budget deficit of nearly $40 billion and a growing debt, then I'm going to suggest to you the spending is out of control. That is the problem. Unless we address that. Now, we think we have a spending problem now, folks. They are not telling you the truth what is coming. They're not telling you the truth of what is coming. Social services alone, it will consume our current budget in not too many years from now. If we don't get spending under control, Australia is going to go broke. Australia is facing some major financial problems in the future unless we can get our spending in control. And we can't get our spending in control because we have an opposition that continually blocks anything. So neither of the major parties are able to get a result because they're more interested in being re-elected than they are in telling the truth. The truth is, this is our financial challenge we have. This is what we have to do. If you don't like it, then vote, another party in and they'll just lie to you or face the reality. So simple solutions to this. I call it a no-budget budget. Australia is hopeless at budgeting, just like many individuals are hopeless at budgeting. So here's what we do. We take 10% of our tax revenue and put it aside. And then if you don't know how to budget, just simply spend what's left. So health, education, defense, etc. Take as a percentage out of the 90% of the revenue and put 10% aside that they can't touch. That 10% goes into reducing debt and or additional infrastructure or innovation spending to grow the economy, incentives, etc., to make the economy expand so we have more of the pie. Does it make sense? These are simple common sense things. If we don't do this and we keep spending 100% of the revenue, no matter how much the revenue is growing from, say, 400 billion to 500 billion, and then we're still spending it all, but worse, what we're doing is not spending 100%, we're spending 110% of everything. We all know if we did that in our own household, what is that going to do? We're going to go broke. We're going to run out of money. We'll have to sell more and more assets to fund the whole. So let's just be honest and get spending under control. It doesn't mean we have to cut services. Oh, we're going to need to come. No, we stop wasting money. The education sector doesn't need more money to deliver better education. It needs a proper education system. What about e-government, e-councils? Technology in the health sector should be slashing costs like it has in the private sector using internet and e-technologies. E-government could slash costs. So there's so many things that could be done to improve services by increased productivity and getting the budget under control. But that requires a truthful discussion with voters. And I believe most voters in Australia are intelligent enough, are willing to accept that we have to be financially disciplined. I know there's certain sections of the public and support certain political party that thinks that you can just tax people, tax more, and spend more. But, you know, we've really got to grow up as a nation. Otherwise, I can tell you now, this country has some major financial problems that I'm telling you about that will need to be addressed. Our debt is going like this, and our spending is out of control. We think it's out of control now. It is growing. We have this ticking time bomb. It's just going to dwarf our revenue. And then what are they going to do? Oh, we need to raise taxes. Well, no, raising taxes does not help the economy. How about get your spending in order, then we'll increase the revenue.
What are some of your key party policies?
So what we did, I wrote a book initially, 101 Ways to Improve Australia. So I guess there's some policy ideas that come from that, which we give away freely, available on our website at 21stcenturyaustralia.com.au. We released the 25-point blueprint plan in 2013, and many of those policies are still relevant to today. Many of them have actually all been implemented or changed. So some of our major policy changes. I mean, we suggested that we need a sovereign wealth fund, and we do have a fund set aside, but we need to be putting a lot more money aside into a sovereign wealth fund. We shouldn't be just blowing all our commodities boom that we had and all this money. More of it should have been set aside. So if our policies were enacted, we would have a much larger sovereign wealth fund that would be producing a much larger return back to the country. So I mean, that would just be smart policy, simple things like that. We pushed very heavily for a fast train network to be built, but we want that built predominantly by overseas investors, where they could build it in 5 or 10 years for a fraction of the cost that we would build it here using Australian companies. So we think we should be not subsidising Australian companies, just giving them work. If it can be built over by Chinese or foreign investors, infrastructure projects, let them build it, saves the taxpayers a large amount of money, so that money goes back to the benefit of the taxpayers and we get infrastructure. We also think when interest rates are so low, we should be borrowing money. There's a difference between good debt and bad debt. You go, well, we don't want to increase our debt. Well, good debt is okay to borrow for infrastructure to make the economy grow. We should be borrowing at record low interest rates and locking it in. What we shouldn't be increasing spending on is the recurring spending that the Rudd-Gillard government introduced of wasteful spending. So we shouldn't be doing that sort of spending, and that's the problem. We're going to cut that wasteful recurring spending. Infrastructure projects is what we want to do. So there's some common sense policies as far as getting the budget in order. Then we have innovative policy ideas as far as a visa tax. If you look at our policy documents, we believe you could raise as much as $15 billion extra a year in visa tax without taxing Australians. Many wealthy people and people who want to come to Australia will happily pay a visa tax, or they can't afford it. We can be taking on a HEC-style debt out of their tax. As they earn the tax over time. So simple things like that would make a big difference. We believe there should be a sugar tax. We support the sugar tax. Increased tax on tobacco, we certainly support that. Certainly multinational Google tax, we support that. Making sure multinationals pay their fair share. We had a tiered company tax policy, which I see the coalition has modelled to some degree, but ours went a lot further. We suggest that the company tax rate for small businesses under $1 million in revenue should only be 15% and tiered up to the 27.5% that it is now for bigger companies, because you want to support smaller companies. So we're a party about helping small business and helping workers, and we want to incentivize those. We incentivize small businesses to create more jobs and to grow, and that will help with employment, incentivize employers. I think there's good ideas such as the internship the coalition's come up with. We like those policies. We like the startup in changes to the tax rules. So we'd be all about more innovative policies to help startups, to create more entrepreneurs. I've been educating for 18 years to say Australia is too risk adverse. We need to be willing to, as individuals, fail. The reason I become successful in my 20s is because I failed at a young age. So we need to encourage entrepreneurship at school. We need to encourage more people to have a go and take a risk and not be so risk adverse. So these are the policy frameworks that we want, and so much more could be done by good government. And it comes from just telling the truth and saying, this is how it is. If you don't like it, go and vote a party that's just going to promise you bullshit and run up the deficit, and then 3 years later we're going to boot them out because we realise the problems. Let's have a frank and honest conversation, and I think Australians are ready for that.
So, as you know that the budget was announced this week, if 21st Century Australia Party could, what would it do differently?
Well, I mean, there's a few good things about the budget. At least they restrained their spending and weren't just doing like one side of politics and a heap of sweetness to get elected. But it's not enough. It is certainly not enough. The budget needs to tell people, look, here's the situation. We had $400 billion 5 years ago across all three levels of government. We now have $500 billion, and we're spending 40 billion more than what we have. Don't tell us we have a revenue problem, because yes, revenue, we'd like it to grow even more, but you're going to go, well, we're overspending even though we have $100 billion more, and we're saying we have a revenue problem. That's the problem, or let's just grow more revenue. No. The first step is get spending under control. Then you're growing revenue and you're going to go somewhere. But if you keep spending 110% of your revenue, as I've highlighted before, it doesn't matter how much revenue you grow, you're going to be broke at a higher level. And that has to change. And it doesn't mean a cutback in services. It means an increase in efficiency and productivity and using technology to slash costs in the government sector and to deliver better outcomes. Common sense policies. Let's make these things happen. So a budget needs to really do that. A budget needs to do a lot more for stimulating, small business. They've done some things there, I said, with the internship and getting people to work. But we have a massive welfare problem in this country. Too many people are getting paid revenue, not paying tax. And too much of the tax burden is put onto the top 10% of taxpayers are paying and are carrying the load. And you need to incentivize not only the lower income people, certainly to get them into work. We need to help people do that more, but we can't disincentivize the people that are funding the bill. And that's why I agree with multinational tax. Make them pay some of the tax so we can lower the tax on smaller companies and give some tax breaks to the individual employees. But we want to do things that will grow the economy, grow the pie. But there's no point growing the pie if we're spending 110% of it, because if we have $600 billion in another 5 years or less, and we're spending 110%, we're going to be at the same place, but only worse, because we have this ticking time bomb of social services and expanding welfare and disability that can't be funded if we don't do something about managing those monies. And of course, education, we're a big believer in education, but money's not the solution there. It's changing the education system.
Jamie, what are the few things that your party needs to make an impact and grow?
Well, we're realistic as a party. I mean, in other words, we have long-term goals in this country, and as I said, we're more of a political movement and want to be a policy think tank than just a political party, because I think you're limited in the political system. But as I said before, even a minor party can get 1 or 2% of the vote. You can determine in a close election who's going to be form government. And I think, even though the Senate rules were changed, which I think was unfair to affect minor parties, you can still have influence. And I think I want to encourage more and more people to be actively passionate about politics. Australians generally only show an interest in politics leading up to the election. We're more interested in the US politics. It seems a lot more entertaining than what we have here in Australia. So, but to do that, we have to feel that as individual voters, we have more of a say. And it would be handy if major parties were willing to listen to, but I think they need to be forced to listen to. We need more minor parties become grow in significance. So we have more diversification of policy ideas. So I think that's good. I think more people should be contributing to the policy debate, and it shouldn't be controlled through News Corp and Fairfax media, predominantly what you get to hear and what are the policies and who you should vote for. I think that's greatly unfair. So I think what you'll see happening in the future is already happening, particularly in America, is that social media is taking the power away from mainstream media. And I think Rupert Murdoch's even admitted he no longer has the power he used to determine who presidents or prime ministers are. I think that's a good thing. I think social media and internet can bring a diversity of ideas, and I think that's very important. And we want to see more of that happen. What we need as a party, we certainly are always wanting to grow our membership. We need volunteers. We need more